The Suez Canal. How a ditch in the desert controls your life. March 2026. If you had coffee this morning, filled up your car, or just walked into a grocery store, this affects you. Here's what's happening right now. Maersk stops Suez. On the 1st of March 2026, the world's largest shipping company, Denmark's Maersk, announced all vessels scheduled to transit the Suez Canal are being rerouted around Africa. The reason? Escalating conflict between the US, Israel, and Iran. Strikes on Iran. Retaliatory attacks on American bases in the Persian Gulf. Iran has closed the Strait of Hormuz, another artery of global trade. What goes through Suez? Everything. 0.12% of all global trade, 30% of the world's container traffic, oil from the Persian Gulf to Europe, liquefied gas from Qatar, goods from China to the stores in London and New York. When the canal works, we don't notice. When it stops, everyone feels it. Egypt's losses, $10 billion. This week, Egyptian President El-Sisi announced because of the drop in shipping, the canal has already lost around $10 billion. Revenues are down 60% compared to 2023. For Egypt, it's a disaster. For the global economy, it's a warning. The USS Gerald Ford, the largest warship in the world, passed through the Suez Canal, 337 meters long, 2 nuclear reactors, 75 aircraft on board. It's heading toward Iran. The canal is no longer just a trade route. It's a road to war. What does this mean for you? Freight costs go up, insurance goes up, oil goes up, everything shipped across the ocean goes up. Coffee, electronics, clothes, food. A Greek newspaper, Kathimerini, wrote recently, inflation is the new normal. Because crises, COVID, the war in Ukraine, problems in Suez, now war in the Middle East, don't end anymore. They just pile on top of each other. Why we're telling you this? This canal is just a strip of water, 300 meters wide. But without it, our world looks completely different. To understand why it matters so much, we have to go back 4,000 years. To the pharaohs who first tried to connect two seas. To Napoleon, who dreamed of cutting Britain's route. To the man who built the canal at the cost of thousands of lives. And to the leader who took it back. This is the story of the Suez Canal, the story of how a narrow ditch in the sand controls your life. Act 1. The Pharaoh's Dream. Imagine you are a trader in the ancient world. To get from the Mediterranean to India, you have to sail all the way around Africa. Thousands of kilometers, months of travel, pirates, storms, starvation. Right here, just 160 kilometers of sand separates two seas. Around 1850 BC, Pharaoh Senusret III ordered a canal dug from the Nile to the Red Sea. Not for ships, for boats, but it was a start. The most ambitious attempt came from Pharaoh Necho II, around 600 BC. He sent Phoenician sailors on the first voyage around Africa, just to see if it was possible, and he started digging. Legend says 120,000 workers died during construction, but the canal was never finished. 100 years later, the Persians arrived. King Darius I conquered Egypt and decided to finish the job. He dug the canal, completed it, and placed granite steles along its banks, inscribed with these words.
I ordered this canal to be dug from the Nile to the sea that goes to Persia. Ships sailed through it to Egypt, just as I intended.
But the canal was shallow, only small vessels could use it, and the sand kept filling it in. Then came the Romans. Under Cleopatra, the canal still worked, but Rome rarely used it. They preferred shipping grain by sea. In the 7th century, Arabs restored the canal to carry food to Mecca. But 100 years later, the Caliph ordered it filled in. He was afraid enemies would use it to reach Arabia, and for 1,000 years, the idea died. Suez was forgotten. Act 2. The French Obsession. A young general named Napoleon Bonaparte sails into Egypt. He's not just conquering, he's dreaming. Napoleon read the ancient texts. He knew about the Pharaohs' Canal, and he decided, France will cut this isthmus. Napoleon sent engineers to survey the land. They measured the Mediterranean and the Red Sea, and they made a mistake. They calculated that the Red Sea was 10 meters higher than the Mediterranean, that a canal would flood the Nile Delta with catastrophic results. Napoleon abandoned the idea. He marched off to Syria. The canal stayed on paper. A young French diplomat named Ferdinand de Lesseps arrives in Egypt. He befriends Prince Said, the son of Egypt's ruler. Lesseps tells the prince about Napoleon's old plans. In 1854, Said becomes ruler of Egypt, and Lesseps rushes to him with papers. On the 30th of November 1854, Said signed the concession. Lesseps was granted the right to build the Suez Canal and operate it for 99 years. Egypt would provide labor. Peasants were rounded up by the thousands. France would provide money. Shares were sold in Paris. Britain was furious. The Prime Minister called the canal a useless hole in the sand. On the 17th of November 1869, the Suez Canal opened. The ceremony was attended by the Empress of France, the Emperor of Austria, the Prince of Prussia. Verdi was commissioned to write an opera, Aida, for the event. It wasn't finished in time, so they opened without it. The first ship passed through the canal. 160 kilometers took 12 hours. The world had changed. Act 3. Crises and Closures. The canal was a gold mine immediately, but Egypt's ruler, Said, was in debt. In 1875, he sold his shares in the canal company to Britain. Bingo. Britain got control of the canal without firing a shot. France was furious. Britain smiled. 7 years later, Britain decided shares weren't enough. They needed to control everything. They invaded Egypt, supposedly to protect the canal, and stayed for 70 years. The canal became British. Oil, troops, empire goods, all passed through it. Revolution in Egypt. The king is overthrown. A colonel named Gamal Abdel Nasser takes power. Nasser dreamed of a great Egypt. He wanted to build the Aswan Dam. America and Britain refused to fund it, so Nasser did something crazy. On the 26th of July, 1956, he announced on the radio, "The Suez Canal now belongs to Egypt." Britain and France lost their minds. 3 months later, Britain, France, and Israel made a plan. Israel would attack Egypt. Britain and France would say, "We must protect the canal," and they'd send in troops. It was all set. On the 29th of October, 1956, Israel invaded Sinai. Britain and France bombed Egypt from the air. Nasser responded by sinking 40 ships in the canal. The waterway was completely blocked. But then the US and USSR stepped in. America pressured Britain financially. The USSR threatened rockets. Britain and France backed down. Nasser won. The canal was Egyptian forever. But the war wasn't over. In 1967, Israel crushed Egypt and took the canal's east bank. The canal became a front line. Egypt blocked it again, this time for 8 years. 15 ships were trapped in the Great Bitter Lake. They were called the Yellow Fleet. Sailors lived on board, created their own post office, stamps, a football league. They were stuck until 1975. In 1975, the canal reopened. But the world didn't depend on it like before. Supertankers had arrived. It was cheaper for them to sail around Africa than to pay the toll. The canal was modernized, deepened, widened. It remained important, but not what it was under Lesseps. Epilogue, Ever Given in the Future. On the 23rd of March 2021, the world remembered Suez. A 400-meter-long container ship, the Ever Given, ran aground and wedged itself diagonally across the canal. 400 ships were stuck. Global trade lost $10 billion a day. For 6 days, the whole world watched as tiny excavators tried to dig out a giant. Today, the Suez Canal is the artery of the world economy. 12% of all global trade passes through it. Egypt is expanding it, digging new branches, trying to prevent future blockages. But the story of the canal is the story of human obsession. Pharaohs dreamed. Napoleon miscalculated. Lesseps built. Nasser took it back. And every time you think it's just a piece of water, something happens to remind you. Suez is alive. 160 kilometers of sand that changed the world. Pharaohs dug, Napoleon dreamed, Lesseps built, Nasser reclaimed, and the water keeps flowing. Every ship passing through Suez sails to 4,000 years of history.